fins, and more fins, and an automatic transmission faster than a manual. That would have to be the Plymouth Fury, coming up on Legends of the Road. Well, hello again there, everyone. Welcome to this edition of Legends of the Road. I'm your host, Ted Jones, and today, as you can see, we're looking at the high point of life of Plymouth. The 1957 Plymouth Fury and the 1950 Plymouth Sport Fury. And what cars they were. Big, beautiful, with those great tail fins. That incredible Torque Flight 727 3-speed automatic transmission and the polyspherical dome engine. Introduced in 1956 as an option package for the popular Savoy, the first Fury came with a 303 cubic inch V8, not all that potent. But by 1957, Fury had its own line and boasted what the 50s were all about. Big tail fins, before Ralph Nader got a hold of them. Plenty of chrome, peaked headlights, big wraparound windshields, and like the earlier Fords, you could have any color you wanted as long as it was Plymouth's buckskin beige. Plymouth used plenty of gold trim, and the cars were just what the name implied. Cool, very cool. By 1959, Plymouth had moved up into the number 3 selling spot in cars sold. Production was helped by the fact that police departments all over the country wanted something big and fast, very fast. And for many of them, Plymouth was the answer. The 1957 era brought adjustable torsion bar suspension, Torque Flight transmission, which was the choice of many young drag racers, by the way, push-button heater controls, swivel seats that came in 1959, as did cams for the front wheel alignment. These years between 1956 and 59 were seen by many enthusiasts as the golden age of the Plymouth division of Chrysler Corporation. As a matter of fact, Chrysler Corporation had released its famous hemispherical head, but not in the big 426 version yet. But this was the forerunner of what was soon to become a big involvement in not only NASCAR racing, but an even bigger involvement in NHRA championship drag racing. Ladies and gentlemen, this was the forerunner of the Chrysler domination of the quarter-mile sport. To find out more about these years, let's take a look at our first car of the day, a 1957 Plymouth Fury owned by Gene Von der Rohe. Gene talked to our producer, Peter Goldsmith, about this beautiful 1957 Plymouth Fury that has become his pride and joy.
It's a limited edition Plymouth that was first manufactured in the 1956 model year. Manufactured them in 56, 57, and 58. Some of the special features of this car would include the engine. It was the first 318 engine that Chrysler built.
Gene, where did you get this car?
Well, I had been looking for a 57 Plymouth Fury for many, many years, and I actually found this one on eBay about a year ago.
Okay, and what brought you to a Plymouth Fury? Why did you want one?
Back a long time ago, when I was 16 years old, I had a friend who had a car that was similar to this. It was a Belvedere 57 with the same engine setup, and I was very much impressed with that car, but I thought at that time I needed a Fury, go right to the top of the line. And the older I got, the more I became interested in old cars. And I started to look for a 57 Plymouth Fury and looked for many years. Generally, if one did pop up for sale, the price was way outside of my range. And then in later years, when I really got serious about collecting, I got serious about finding one. It took, again, several years, but I finally found this car on eBay.
So Plymouth for you was really a romantic choice?
More than anything. My father was a Chrysler person all his life. And of course, that was bred in me. He was a four-door sedan guy, and I wasn't. Was quite a bit the difference.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about this specific car, and this is absolutely beautiful. When we get to 1950s cars, they really are about style. So before we get under the hood, I know you're aching to do that, let's talk a little bit about exterior styling on this car.
Well, the things that make the car stand out to a certain extent are the gold anodized trim on the side, the gold grille. It has gold highlights on the hubcaps, and of course the very sleek body style that was new in 1957. Chrysler Corporation advertised it as suddenly as 1960. It was just a fantastic body style, and it pretty much turned the automotive industry on end for a short time. Plymouth sold more cars in 1957 than they ever had in their history because of the styling more than anything.
Okay, and who was the designer of the 57?
Was Mr. Virgil Exner, who came to Chrysler in the early 50s, was responsible for the 55s on through the early 60 design of the Chrysler cars.
Okay, and we're seeing the beginnings of a fin. And that's something that we saw in the 57 Chevy, certainly, and the Cadillacs took that to the nth degree. Was this the first year of the actual fin for the Furies?
The Furies had a small fin in 1956, but they were exaggerated somewhat in 57, and of course that lasted for several years.
One of the things I really like about this car is the bumpers on this car. They're very stylized, they wrap around, they're really beautiful.
The bumpers are unique to the higher model Plymouths. It's a regular bumper, and then the wings that are on either side are bolt-on features, actually, optional equipment.
Legends of the Road is brought to you by Stainless Steel Brakes. Performance brakes built right. And by ARP, manufacturers of aerospace quality fasteners. The big fins just keep getting bigger, and the gold keeps getting brighter. We'll have more when we return on Legends of the Road. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Legends of the Road. This week we're looking at some beautiful Plymouth Furies from Talladega, Alabama. Before we get under the hood, Gene, what about this gold anodizing? Is that just for the Fury?
That's right. That's the only car, and it started also in 1956 and went through 58.
Now, I've read several places that the only color you could get was Plymouth beige, which this one kind of is. True or false?
All 3 years had the same color, but they had different names, and this one happens to be sand dune white.
Okay, but it is pretty much that Plymouth beige.
Same beige, I think, in all 3 years.
Okay. How about the interior appointments? Talk about the upholstery first.
The upholstery on the seats is cloth and vinyl, and it's also unique to the Fury. It was the only offering in the Fury.
Okay, what are the creature comforts here as far as radios and heaters and those kinds of things?
Well, they're very basic. It has an AM radio that's a tube-type radio, and it takes about 45 seconds to warm up. Folks today think it doesn't work. It has push-button drive, power steering, and a heater, and that's really the extent of the amenities.
And what were the options you could add to that?
In the Fury, there really were no options to speak of. A rear seat speaker for the radio was optional. They did offer air conditioning, but they obviously didn't sell too many. And there really weren't too many options because the car was pretty well loaded the way it was.
Okay, good. Let's talk a little bit about engine, transmission, and those things. You just said push-button drive. Real popular Chrysler innovation, push-button drive. Talk about it.
Yes, sir. Again, it first appeared in the 1956 Chrysler cars. Push-button quadrant on the left of the dashboard. They offered in 57 a power flight, which was a 2-speed automatic, and a torque flight, which was a 3-speed. And Furies all came with a 3-speed torque flight. Excellent transmission, still the same basic transmission today. Very, very strong and reliable.
Let's talk about the engine. Let's get under the hood. What do you got?
This is a 318. It's the first 318 that Chrysler built. It was built specifically for the Fury, and it was incorporated 2 Carter 4-barrel carburetors. It developed 290 horsepower and 325 foot-pounds of torque.
Now, if I were going to offer you $25,000 for the car right now, what'd you say?
I would not be in the mood to talk about it.
How about if I offered you $30,000?
No, sir.
So this is your car?
Well, I looked for this car for many, many years, and when I finally found it, I had to sell a 57 Chevy that was really nice and a Corvette to allow, so that my wife would allow me to bring this car home, put it in the garage.
So not only did it save your marriage, but now it's your car, so no sale, right?
No problem.
Yeah.
Well, glad you like that car, Gene. But now let's jump ahead 2 years and look at the '59 Ford Fury of Bob Hines. Bob, give us a little history of your Plymouth.
The Chrysler Corporation was started as the first car in 1924. In 1928, Chrysler bought Dodge Brothers to introduce the Dodge. She introduced the DeSoto as a brand new car and the Plymouth as a brand new car. The first Plymouths were 4 cylinders. They were started to offer 6 cylinders in 1933, and they stuck with the 6-cylinder until 1955 when they came out with their first V8.
Let's talk about the Fury badge or the Fury Mark II. When did it first come out, and talk about it a little bit?
Well, Chrysler came out with a Chrysler 300 in 1955, and they didn't have anything comparable in the lower price line. So in 1956, mid-year, they came out with the first Fury, which was only offered in an off-white with the gold trim and the gold grille and a 303 cubic inch engine. Then there was an evolution for 57 and 58. Now those 3 years are what are called the Golden Furies because of the gold trim, and they were limited edition. They only were available in one color interior, and only in hardtops. 1959, in response to the 1958 Chevrolet Impala, which was available as a limited edition in 58, but it was a convertible or a hardtop. Plymouth came out with a Sport Fury in 59, but Chevrolet didn't follow suit in 59. Instead, they didn't have an exclusive Impala. That was just the name of the top-of-the-line car, station wagons and sedans and everything. So Plymouth was there by itself. But they did an exceptional job in 59 to upgrade the Plymouth. So the quality of assembly, which had been poor when they first started with the 57 design, because they rushed them into production. The quality improved tremendously, assembly quality. Plus, they wanted to make the cars more luxurious looking, so they imperialized them. They stole a lot of styling clues from the 57 and 58 Imperials, namely the spare tire on the trunk lid, the leaning forward fins instead of leaning backward fins, for example, and they lifted it up, which was the way to go back in the 1950s. One of the features that was new for 59 was the swivel seat.
What was the list price on a Sport Fury in 1959?
Base price was about $2,800.
Okay. And how about the Chevrolets that was comparable? What was their base price? Give me an idea.
Well, as I said, they didn't have an exactly comparable model because the Impala in 59 included sedans and everything, but they would be comparable, maybe just slightly less.
So it was a mid-range car that a family could afford?
Yes. And it was a lot fancier than the Chevrolet and the Ford of that year as far as the interior goes.
Another look at the masterpiece car designing great Virgil Exner came up with, coming right up when we continue. Stay with us. We're back on Legends of the Road at the International Motorsports Hall of Fame in Talladega, Alabama, talking with Sport Fury expert Bob Hines. Bob, what brought you to a Sport Fury in the first place?
Well, I had one when they were new, when I was in college. And I sold it when it was 6 years old and regretted it. So I was looking through the Auto Trader, which is primarily for newer cars. And lo and behold, there it was. And it was about 50 miles from my home, and I went and looked at it, made several trips, negotiated, and a few weeks later it was mine.
Great. And what year was that?
1990.
So you've had the car 12 years?
Yes.
What have you done to this particular car since you've had it?
Well, the car was drivable when I bought it. I drove it home. But it was old car looking. The paint was dull. Didn't have many rust on it, or a few little dings. Bumpers were dented a little bit, but just an old car. The interior was worn, but mechanically it was pretty good. So mechanically, the car's not been restored. It had 56,000 miles on it when I bought it. It's got almost 76,000 on it now. So I put roughly 20,000 miles on it.
So you drive the car?
Yes, I drive it. It's never been trailered since I've owned it. I enjoy driving.
Okay.
And so mechanically, it was just a matter of fix it up, clean it up, tune it up, and enjoy it. So, but as far as the major restoration, the chrome, the paint, and the upholstery are the three major things.
Okay. Let's start at the front of the car. Let's start with the chrome. We just looked at a 1957 Fury, and the bumper is far more Art Deco, let me put it that way to you. This one is a little bit more simple. It's a beautiful bumper, but it's a little simpler.
Well, in 57 and 58, they had a unique grille and side trim, which was gold. In 59, The Sport Fury shares the same grille, bumper, and everything with all the other Plymouths, even the station wagon. And it's not gold anodized aluminum, it's just plain silver-colored anodized aluminum. And you're right, the bumper design is a more simple design.
Yeah, and I noticed the grille design is a little bit simpler as well. As you said, it is the silver as opposed to gold anodized. And also what I always call the undergrill, which is under the bumper, which was fairly ornate in the 57, is no longer that in the 59.
Right, 59, let me back up a bit. The 58 versus the 57, the undergrill in the 57 had some vertical lines to it. In the 58, they had a little sort of one that mimicked the upper grill. And a lot of people consider it more attractive, more fitting to the styling. 59 was totally different. They had a big scoop. And this is the days when people were fascinated with jet airplanes and rocket ships. This was supposed to be like a scoop for a jet airplane. And of course, it does sort of bring air into the radiator, but I think it was more of a styling thing than anything else.
Okay. Now I'm looking at the headlights, and one thing I love about these headlights, and we saw it in the 50s, but this is more pronounced than I've seen it, but they're really hooded, and that's right. Terrific.
Well, 57 cars, some cars were offered with 4 headlights, but not all states would allow it. So we didn't really see it until 58, and that was a styling gimmick. That was the way to be, was the 4 headlights. So just about all the 58 cars had 4 headlights. When they restyled the Plymouth for 59, they came up with this double barrel approach on the fenders, and the headlights with the black surround, they kind of look like they're floating underneath the headlight. It was just a styling gimmick.
I think it's great. I really like it. Let's move around a little bit to the side. Again, the ornamentation on the body is similar to the 57, but here it's again silver and not gold.
That's
and
correct.
You've got a darker colored car, copper color, I would call it.
Right. Well, in 59 they offered multiple colors, of interior and exterior, as well as a convertible and a hardtop. This particular car is bronze, and bronze was only offered on the Sport Fury. Now, as far as the side trim, this is unique to the Sport Fury, and it mimics the fin in the rear. The other models, the trim went back and then down under the main horizontal trim. On the Sport Fury, it goes back, and the upper part mimics the shape of the fin, which personally I think makes the fin more attractive.
Let's get under the hood. Let's talk about engine, transmission, suspension. Let's start with the engine.
Okay.
What have you got? What were the options that you could get?
Okay, this particular model came standard with what they called a 318, that's cubic inch displacement, with a super pack.
Which is a V8, if you're
It's a V8, right. The 318 cubic inches. And it came with a hot cam, dual exhaust, a 4-barrel Carter carburetor, a different distributor curve, etc., to give it more horsepower and torque than the regular 318 V8. And this particular car has the 3-speed torque-flat transmission. Chrysler also offered a lesser 318. They offered a 361 engine, cubic inch engine, which had more horsepower and torque, and most of these Sport Furies were equipped with that. It was only an $87 option, so a lot of people bought it. Unfortunately, a lot of those cars were driven hard, and they aren't around anymore because of the higher performance engine.
If my checkbook is open, what's it going to take for me to buy this car from you?
Well, first of all, let me start with the beginning saying I had no intention of selling it. Okay. I can only tell you what it's appraised at, and that's in the low 20s.
But you would not sell your car?
No, I would not.
Okay.
It's a keeper.
All right, now that you love them, can you afford one, and is it worth the price? We'll tell you that when Legends of the Road continues. Legends of the Road is brought to you by Honda, the power of dreams, and by United Specialties, home of the Trendsetter. Now, if you're a regular viewer of Legends of the Road, you already know that this is the time of the show where we see this week's cars and if they can stack up against our former cars and against themselves for that matter. We rate each car in 4 categories, and the car can earn up to 5 stars in each category. If that car earns at least 12 stars, we'll retire it into our Legends of the Road Hall of Fame. So, if you're ready, let's get going with overall effect on motoring. These Furies are some of the most beautiful cars we've ever seen, with the big fins and everything and all their technical innovation. And the nice ride they have. We credit them with being an icon of the age of the mid to late 50s. The Furies get a solid 4 stars. Engineering and technology. Torque flight transmissions, they were a major innovation in the 50s. So were the polyspherical engines. We like them both, and therefore we'll give the Plymouth another solid 4 stars. Then our next category is style. When you deal with these gorgeous cars of the 50s, what can you say? Styling said it all. Oftentimes at the expense of the engineers, these two are absolutely beautiful, both inside and out. We can't help but give the Fury 5 solid stars in this category, and worth the price. The Plymouth Fury was the top of the Plymouth line, and it wasn't cheap. But today, these have appreciated very well in price. If you want a real taste of the 50s, fins and all, this is the one we definitely think is worth the price, so we'll give it 3 stars. And just as we thought, another car enters our Legends of the Road Hall of Fame. Now it's time to see what you'll have to pay for one of these Plymouth Furies. Where do you go look? Well, you watch Legends of the Road and wait on the money to come up as we go up to New York City and talk to our experts. On the money each week, our Legends of the Road car appraisal expert advises us on collector car values. This week, the Plymouth Fury. So, from Cooper Classics in New York City, here is Elliot Cooper.
Hi, Ted. How are you?
Just fine, Elliot.
Plymouth Fury. Fury, I'll tell you, great name for the car. You look at the car, and somehow or other, that name describes the car. In '57, the fins were extraordinary. Beautiful, long fins. The car looks like it's moving. As a matter of fact, the design of that car was so special and gave such a feeling of life of its own that actually the movie Christine used a Plymouth Fury in the movie itself, because it just, you feel like the car actually was speaking to you just as it did in the movie. Okay, now a Plymouth Fury, I would say, a really top shape, a hard top, will be worth probably somewhere around $18,000. It's a great year, it's a great investment because they're going to appreciate. If you can get a convertible, well, of course, that's going to be worth more money. The convertible will be worth at least $25,000, $26,000, $27,000. Now, I've seen some hard tops. You'll see them around. You can buy one for $10,000, $11,000, $12,000, but they're going to need work. If I were you, I would get one that somebody completely did and pay $18,000, $17,000 at the most. Okay, now, a '59 Sports Fury. '59 is still a great car, but for some reason, the '57 has more value. The '59, I would say, is probably worth, in a hard top, I'd say about $15,000. You want a convertible, it's going to cost you at least $10,000 more. And I know that some in great shape are fetching as much as $25,000, $26,000. But it's a fun car to drive, it feels good, it looks good, and there's something about a Plymouth Fury that no other car has. If you want any cars like that at all, call me. I'm here at Cooper Classics. I'll be happy to help you anytime you like. Thanks.
Thank you, Elliot, and thanks too to Bob and Jean for sharing your beautiful Plymouth with us. Now, next time, we'll take a look at some Studebakers that I'm sure you've never thought of as Studebakers. That's all for today, though. I'm Ted Jones. See you next time, ladies and gentlemen, with more Legends of the Road. Legends of the Road is a presentation of ESPN, the worldwide leader in sports. For more, log on to ESPN.com.